I watched my younger brother rip the wrapping off a Rolex like it was a candy bar. Big silver face, gold trim, the whole thing screamed money we didn't have. Mom gasped and clutched her chest like he'd just proposed to a princess. Dad grinned ear to ear, already asking if it needed adjusting. Trevor leaned back, soaking it up like a king at his coronation. Meanwhile, I sat there holding a thin envelope. No weight to it, no thought either. Just a $2 drugstore holiday card, generic snowflakes on the front, blank inside, not even a signature. I looked up. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and didn't care. They moved on fast, passing plates, pouring wine, asking Trevor about his new job at the firm. Same questions they've asked me once in 10 years. Probably forgot I even had a job. Never mind that I'd spent 3 months scraping money together from overtime at the shop to buy them all gifts. Not flashy stuff, just real, personal. A custom leather tool roll for Dad's vintage wrenches. A rare Fleetwood Mac vinyl for Mom. Trevor got 2 tickets to a concert he once said he'd kill to see. Nobody said thank you. I forced a smile. Classic move. Keep the peace. Don't rock the boat. I nodded when Dad called Trevor the golden boy. Laughed when Mom said, everything always works out for him, doesn't it? Sure does, Mom. Must be magic. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Aunt Diane sat in the corner with her tea, watching it all go down. She didn't say anything, but when our eyes met, she gave me this slow blink and a tight smile, like she'd seen this exact movie play out 100 times. I stood up, made up something about needing to take a call, grabbed my jacket off the banister, and headed for the truck. The roads were dead quiet, like everyone else in Portland was tucked inside with their lights twinkling and fires crackling. I drove 30 minutes out to the ridge above the river, somewhere I used to go in high school when everything felt too loud. Parked, turned off the engine, just sat. The envelope was still in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, looked at the snowflakes again, like maybe I'd missed something. Nope, still blank. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some accident. It wasn't forgetfulness or bad luck or timing. It was the truth laid bare. I wasn't a son tonight. Wasn't a brother either. I was just the extra chair at the table. The tears came before I could fight them. Hot, ugly ones. I let them fall. Then I crumpled the card in my fist and stared out over the city, lit up like something out of a catalog. I didn't sleep that night, drove straight home, walked into my apartment, and didn't bother turning on the lights. Just dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a second, breathing through my teeth. The city outside was dead quiet. Inside, it was colder somehow. I kicked off my boots and went straight to the hall closet. Bottom shelf, behind a stack of old manuals and spark plug boxes, was the one thing I hadn't touched in a long time. A dusty blue Rubbermaid bin with family stuff sharpied on the lid. I hauled it onto the floor, popped it open, and got hit with a wave of paper and old air. Photos, report cards, torn envelopes, a few baby teeth in a Ziploc for God knows what reason. I pushed all that aside until I found the black and red composition book near the bottom, my personal ledger. I didn't keep it out of bitterness. I kept it because numbers don't lie, and I got tired of wondering if I was crazy. I opened it. First entry, my 10th birthday. Gave Dad a hand-carved keychain. Got $5 bill taped in a card. Next page, Trevor's 8th birthday. Gave RC car with batteries. Got nothing. And it just went on. I grabbed a notebook and started stacking receipts, physical ones and mental ones, every birthday, every Christmas, every single milestone. What I gave, what I got, who showed up, who didn't. I had the email from Dad. Sorry, bud, can't help with the deposit. When I scraped together enough to move out. I remember sitting on the floor of that first apartment, eating off paper plates, hoping my debit card wouldn't get declined at the gas station. 2 weeks later, Trevor posted photos of his downtown condo, fully furnished, view of the river. Mom commented, "Proud doesn't even begin to cover it." Same woman who told me, some people have to learn the hard way. I pulled out the letter from trade school, the one with my name on the dean's list. I remembered inviting them to graduation. Dad skipped it. "Trevor's got an important interview," Mom said. "You understand?" Yeah, I always understood. I stacked everything on the floor like a crime scene. Cards, emails, photos. One pile for me, one for him. Mine looked like leftovers. His looked like a scrapbook. I wasn't trying to prove I'd been mistreated. I just wanted to know I wasn't imagining it. that the pattern was real, that I hadn't spent my whole life twisting myself into knots for a family that only saw me when they needed something. The ledger didn't lie. Every time Trevor wanted to start something new, college, internships, a condo, there was a check ready. Every time I needed help, loans, moving, emergencies, I got a pat on the back and you'll figure it out. And I did, alone. I sat back against the couch, legs stretched out, the floor covered in 20 years of proof. My phone buzzed. Group text, great night tonight, love you all, Merry Christmas. Trevor had added a selfie of him, and Mom holding his new Rolex. Dad was in the background, raising a glass. I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed my journal from the coffee table, cracked it open to a blank page. I didn't need paragraphs or feelings or poetic closure. I just wrote one sentence. This ends now. Then I underlined it, twice. And I went to bed, not sad, not mad, just clear. I woke up the next morning with the journal still open on the coffee table. I made coffee, didn't check my phone, let the quiet hang for once. Around noon, the first message came in. Mom, BBQ, Sunday, nothing fancy. Could you bring ribs and help set up around 2? That old itch kicked in, the one that says, don't be difficult, just help. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keys. Then I typed, I have plans, and I hit send. No explanation, no guilt trip apology. First time in my life I'd ever said no to her like that. I sat back and waited. Nothing. Just read. No dots typing, not even a question mark. 2 hours later, Trevor called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, can you come by this weekend? I'm moving to that new apartment and I could use an extra set of hands. Nope, I said. Can't. Good luck with it. A pause. Dude, you serious? Yeah. Click. 5 minutes later, he texted. What's wrong with you lately? I didn't overthink it. Just sent back, taking time for myself. That was it. No lecture, no fight. I wasn't asking permission to change. The next day, Aunt Diane called. Her voice had that same quiet strength it always did, like she knew how to sit inside hard truths. I heard you skipped the BBQ planning committee, she said with a little laugh. Guess I'm off the roster now. Good, she said. It's about time you stop burning yourself to keep everyone else warm. I didn't say anything, just held the phone to my ear and let it settle in. You're not being selfish, she added. You're being sane. That stuck with me. Not selfish. Sane. Later that night, I pulled up a bookmarked tab on my laptop, an intro welding course I'd looked at for years, but always found excuses not to sign up for. It started in 2 weeks, nights and weekends, $400. I had it. Barely, but I had it. I hit register, filled in my info, and punched in my card number. It felt good. Not because it was practical. Not because it would help anyone else. Just because I wanted it. A couple of days passed. No messages from home, no guilt bombs, no surprise drop-ins. I think they were waiting to see if it would blow over. It didn't. I cleaned out my closet, tossed the old family calendar where I used to jot down every birthday and anniversary. I started leaving my phone on silent. If someone needed me, they could wait. One night, I came home, made a frozen pizza, cracked a beer, and sat on the couch with a welding textbook in my lap. I flipped through the pages, running my thumb along the edge like it meant something. And it did. It was the first real thing I'd done just for me. I dog-eared the page in my welding book and set it on the coffee table. My hands smelled like grease and metal from the shop. I didn't mind. That smell meant work, meant progress. The next day I picked up an extra shift, then another. Didn't even ask, just told my boss I wanted the hours. Trying to save for something? He asked, half joking. I just nodded, didn't tell him what, didn't tell anyone. I started calling it the Freedom Fund. Every payday, I split my check. Bills, groceries, rent. And then, whatever was left went in an envelope under the floorboard in my closet. That pile started small. A few 20s, some 5s, but it added up. Every extra shift, every skipped takeout, it grew. A couple weeks in, one of the guys at work, Josh, poked his head in while I was wiping down my tools. Poker night at my place. Saturday, you in? I almost said no, out of habit. But I stopped myself. Yeah, I'll come. His eyebrows jumped like he didn't expect it. Cool, bring beer if you want. Starts at 7. That night was the first time in years I laughed till my sides hurt. Dumb jokes, cheap cards. Everyone shouting when someone bluffed too hard. I didn't win a dime, but I didn't care. I hadn't realized how much I missed just being around people who didn't expect anything from me. Next morning, I pulled the cover off the old Yamaha that had been sitting in the back of my storage unit since before Trevor had a license. Tires were flat, chain was rusted, tank was full of old gas. But I saw what it used to be, and what it could be again. I spent my nights bringing it back to life, parts here and there off Craigslist, late nights with music blasting while I worked, hands black with oil, face lit by the shop light. It was mine, every bolt, every fix. When I finally got it running, I took it out to the Columbia River Gorge and rode till my fingers went numb, trees flashing past, wind cutting through my jacket. For once, nobody needed me. I didn't owe anyone anything. I just rode. Back at the shop, the boss pulled me aside after I clocked out. "You've been sharp lately," he said. "Thinking of putting someone new on the fleet account. Lead mechanic. You interested?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'm in. You want to talk it over with anyone first?" "Nope, just me." He smiled. "All right then." That night, I cleared space on my desk and framed the cheap Christmas card. Not because I forgave it, but because I needed to see it. Every damn day. A reminder of what pushed me to get here. I took a photo of it and saved it in a folder called Truth. No filter. No caption. It was ugly, but it was honest. And that's what I'd finally started building. Something real. The wedding came fast. Cousin Jared, big church downtown, reception at a hotel ballroom. I walked in wearing a navy jacket I'd had tailored. Nothing flashy, just clean lines, perfect fit. For once, I didn't feel like the grease-stained mechanic in the corner. I felt like a man who didn't owe anyone an explanation. Family buzzed around the cocktail hour like bees. I caught a glimpse of Trevor by the bar. His shirt collar was loose, tie hanging like a leash. He had that worn-out look, the one you get after too many nights staring at overdue bills. Word had already floated down the grapevine. Laid off, behind on rent, maybe losing his car. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel smaller next to him. I felt steady, solid, like the ground had finally evened out beneath my boots. Dinner came, tables packed tight. My parents sat across from me, beaming at Trevor like they always did. But I caught a shift in the conversation. Dad leaned back, glass of wine in hand. "Gotta say, we're proud of how responsible you've been lately," he said, looking straight at me. Mom nodded, smiling like she'd rehearsed it. Such a hard worker. Always steady. That word, responsible, hit different. They'd never used it on me before. Not once. Halfway through dinner, Mom touched my arm. "Can I talk to you for a second?" She led me out by the coat racks, away from the noise. She dropped her voice soft, like we were plotting something. "You know your brother's having a tough time right now," she said. "He might need a little help with rent until he gets back on his feet." I didn't even blink. "He's got to figure it out." Her eyes widened, like I'd just sworn in church. "But honey, I cut her off. I said, he's got to figure it out. She looked stunned. I turned and walked back into the ballroom before she could push again. Later, while grabbing coffee near the dessert table, I caught Trevor talking to one of our cousins. His voice carried. "Yeah, we're probably going to have to downsize. Market's tough right now, you know." The old me would have stepped in. Offered a couple $100, maybe helped cover a deposit. That reflex wasn't there anymore. I sipped my coffee, let the words float past me, and didn't move a muscle. At the table, Aunt Diane raised her glass across the room. When our eyes met, she gave me the smallest nod, like she saw everything without me saying a word. She always had. After dessert, Dad cornered me near the exit. His voice was low, but his jaw was tight. "You're doing well now. Think you could help your brother a bit?" I met his stare head on. "Not while things stay the way they've always been." His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I slid my jacket on, shook his hand once, firm, quick, and walked back into the crowd. A week later, I parked in front of their house. Same cracked driveway, same porch light, flickering like always. My palms were sweating, but I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I walked in without knocking. They were sitting in the living room like they knew this talk was coming. I didn't waste time. I sat down, reached into my coat, and pulled out the framed Christmas card, set it right on the coffee table. "This," I said, "was the moment I realized you don't see me." Mom blinked. Dad shifted in his chair like I'd just insulted the furniture. I pulled the ledger from my bag, pages marked, notes highlighted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I kept track, not to throw it in your face, just to stop gaslighting myself. Dad scoffed. Gaslighting? Seriously? Let him talk, Aunt Diane said. She was already sitting near the window. I hadn't even noticed her before. I flipped open the book. Graduation? You skipped it because Trevor had an interview. Come on, Dad muttered. It was important. I kept going. College, he got full tuition. I took out loans. My first apartment. Sorry, bud, can't help with the deposit. Meanwhile, he's posting pics of a condo you helped pay for. Mom's eyes welled up. Birthdays, holidays, everything. You don't even have to look at the numbers. Just look at who got shown up for and who got forgotten. That's not fair, Dad said, sitting forward. We did what we could. I looked him dead in the eye. No, you did what you chose. I was never a priority. That shut him up. Mom covered her mouth. Tears were spilling now. I didn't know you felt like this. You didn't want to know, I said, because I never made it hard on you. I smiled, nodded, brought ribs, paid my way, and let you all pretend everything was fine. No one spoke. Then Trevor cleared his throat. He was sitting on the stairs, head down. He's right, he said. I always got more. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't stop it either. I'm sorry, man. I looked at him. For the first time, he actually looked ashamed. I didn't say anything back, not out of spite. I just didn't have it in me. This wasn't about apologies. It was about saying the thing I'd been biting back for years. I leaned back in my chair, looked around the room one more time. Same pictures on the walls, same scratch on the coffee table from when I was 12. None of it had changed, but I had. After 90 minutes, I stood up, grabbed the ledger, and slid the card back into my coat pocket. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just done pretending none of this happened. I walked out without waiting for a response. 8 months later, I turned the key and stepped into my own front door. Not an apartment, not a rental. A real house. Mine. Just a small one-story on the edge of town, but it had a garage with high ceilings and a solid workbench. That was the dream all along. I kicked off my boots, dropped my keys in the tray, and closed the door behind me. The place still smelled like fresh paint and sawdust from the shelves I'd built last weekend. On the wall by the front hallway hung the same $2 Christmas card I'd framed months ago, still blank inside, next to a copy of my first paycheck as lead mechanic, both in matching black frames, not as some dramatic reminder, but as honest proof of where I started and where I was headed. I kept things simple. Tools in the garage, food in the fridge, bills paid early. I didn't need much more. Trevor had started working again. Nothing flashy. Warehouse job, early shifts. But he was budgeting, figuring it out. He called once, asking how to set up automatic payments on his utilities. That alone was a miracle. Mom texted every week now. Her messages were shorter, softer. No guilt trips, no backhanded compliments. Just check-ins, sometimes a picture of her garden, sometimes just, thinking of you, proud. Dad sent me a message a few weeks back. Just one sentence. Proud of the man you are. It didn't undo everything, but it landed. Some cracks in the foundation finally got patched. That summer, I decided to host a barbecue. Not to prove anything, not for a thank you, just because I wanted to. I mowed the lawn, scrubbed the patio, set out folding chairs in a crooked half circle, made ribs, burgers, and a pitcher of sweet tea that was too damn sweet. People showed up. Trevor brought a salad in a grocery bag. Mom carried a tray of deviled eggs. Dad brought folding chairs and didn't say a word about how I should have grilled the meat. That alone was progress. Aunt Diane walked in last, carrying her famous potato salad in a glass bowl wrapped in 2 dish towels. She gave me a once-over and nodded, like she already knew what I was going to say before I said it. We ate, we laughed. Nobody asked me for anything. Nobody hinted about rent or favors or what you're doing with all that money now. Just food, people, music. After we finished eating, Aunt Diane stood up and raised her cup. To the man, she said, who stopped waiting to be seen. Everyone clapped, even Trevor. I didn't give a speech, didn't need to. I just raised my glass, took a sip, and looked around my backyard. June again. 1 year since the card. I parked across the street from their place, engine ticking as it cooled. The house looked the same but older, paint a little more faded, lawn overgrown at the edges. I knocked once and let myself in. They were already in the living room. Trevor sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded tight. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mom was clutching a coffee mug she hadn't sipped from. "The business is gone," Dad said flat. "We're downsizing, thinking of renting out the basement, just trying to stay ahead of it." Mom reached for my hand. "You've always been our strong one," she said, voice trembling. "We need help." I nodded. Let the silence hang a second. Then I spoke. "You need help now," I said. "But I needed support for 30 years, and I got scraps." Mom's face cracked. She didn't try to argue, just started crying. Dad didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared straight at me like I'd flipped the world upside down. "I'll help," I said. "But not with money?" His eyes narrowed. I kept going. "I'll help you find an accountant. I'll help Trevor with job leads. I'll bring over frozen meals if it comes to that. But I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your bank." Dad leaned forward. "You're punishing us." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'm protecting myself." He pulled back like I'd slapped him, but he didn't speak again. I stood, walked over to the hook by the door, grabbed my jacket. "I'll be here Sunday for dinner," I said, slipping my arm into the sleeve. "If you're ready to treat me like part of this family, not just the one who fills the gaps." Nobody said a word. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and stepped into the warm air. No weight on my back, no knot in my gut. It wasn't revenge, it was repair. On my terms. Would you have walked away, or helped anyway? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.